This is 48 Hours' first live session in 2017. I wish you all a very happy new year. We are here in Andheri, ahead of the Indian Wine Consumer Choice Awards 2017. We are going to give you a tiny beginner's guide to how to go about tasting the wine. If you want to register for the event, you just need to visit HT 48 Hours. All the registration details are online. We have with here Mr. Nikhil Agarwal. He's a wine expert. Over to you, Nikhil. You can talk to people about what is the guide.
Alright, hi folks. My name is Nikhil. I'm a sommelier and I'm also the CEO of All Things Nice. We started the Indian Wine Consumers Choice Awards about 5 years ago, and the intention behind the Consumers Choice Awards was to get you, the consumer, to decide for yourself which wines that you like. So what we do is we put together 100 people who we call judges, and we do a blind tasting of all the wines that are available in India. And the reason we do the blind tasting is because we want you to judge the wine without knowing the brand that makes it or the price point that it comes at. So you are purely relying on your sense of smell, taste, etc. to know whether or not you like the wine, and accordingly then we score the wines. Based on your scores, we then award the wines gold, silver and bronze. So it's not rocket science. We do want you to be people that already drink wine, because otherwise it wouldn't be fair to the wineries. Indian wine has taken off. It's every year the quality gets better and better. And the intention again is to highlight which are the better wines or which are the wines that people like you enjoy. So we want to create a list of wines that have been chosen by you, rather than sommeliers like me or writers, etc. Sometimes there is a slight disconnect, and we'd rather you be on the driving seat. So, a couple of things about wine. A lot of people think that it's sort of there's this mystery to wine and it's complicated, but actually it's really not. It's people, sometimes we tend to overcomplicate things. First and foremost, you must remember that drinking wine is about pleasure, all right? So not very often will you go to a restaurant and see people do this with their glasses of wine or write tasting notes of the wine that they're drinking, because at the end of it, they want to enjoy their wine. When you want to have a deeper appreciation of what you're drinking, that's when you start paying attention to the aromas and the palate and the body and the acidity, etc. of the wine. We're at the Liber Experience Center in Andheri, and they do a fabulous job of keeping the wines correctly stored. And what I'm going to do for you right now, I'm going to go through a couple of basics. This won't make you an expert, but this will certainly get you going in your journey on wine. So the world of wine, first of all, is broken up into old world countries and new world countries. Okay, so you have the old world countries are very simple. All the countries that are in Europe, Spain, France, Italy, Germany, those are old world countries, and they've been producing wines for thousands of years. Then you have new world countries. You have countries like Chile, Argentina, USA, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa. These are countries that have been producing wines for 300 years, 400 years, 200 years. So in terms of thousands of years, they're still younger, and that's why they're called New World. India has been producing wine for about 20 to 25 odd years. So we're babies in the wine producing world. So in my own reference, I call them New World wines, and they're quite interesting. So now that you know where the wine, how we categorize wines, let's talk about the grape varieties themselves. You have different grape varieties. You have a Chardonnay. In white grape varieties, the most popular grape varieties would be grape varieties like Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc. In India, Chenin Blanc is very, very popular. We make a good amount of Viognier, and some Riesling as well, some very little Riesling. In the reds, we make a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon, Shiraz, some Merlot. We also experiment with grape varieties like Sangiovese, Nero d'Avola, and we also do select other grape varieties like Tempranillo, but I won't get into too much about all that. Every grape variety that you drink or that you enjoy will have its own sort of characteristics. It's like the DNA of the grape variety. Where the grape is grown will give that grape variety its own characteristics. A Cabernet Sauvignon is a grape variety, for example, and if it's grown in Nasik, it'll have certain characteristics that Nasik brings to it. When I say Nasik, I'm talking about soil, climate, rain, water in the soil, etc. And then of course you have human intellect and human influence on how the wine will be made. That same grape variety, when it's made in a place in Australia like Coonawarra, or it's made in Napa Valley in the US, will have similar traits because it's the same grape variety, but will also showcase different characteristics because it comes from a different region, right? Some places are warmer, some places are cooler, some vineyards are planted on horizontal vineyards, some vineyards are planted on sort of more vertical vineyards. All of that matters, okay? So grape varieties will have their own DNA. Now, what you need to do when you're tasting wine is to look at its characteristics. So first you start by, first of all, you have to hold a glass like this. Okay, don't hold a glass like this because the heat from your hand will warm the wine. So hold the glass like this. If you're artsy-fartsy sort of people, you could also hold it like this, but keep it simple. This is good. You'll see a lot of people rotating the glass, and this is because we want the wine to open up. We want it to react with air with oxygen in the air and allow the wine to open up. The more you do this, more aromas will be released. But that's second stage. First, you've got to look at the wine. The color of the wine will tell you a lot about the wine itself. Okay, so each grape variety that I spoke about earlier has a distinct sort of color profile. Okay, so if you taste wine enough and you pay attention often enough, you will suddenly realize, hey, okay, that wine is greenish or yellowish or lighter colored red or ruby red or purple, and you'll be able to tell that maybe this grape variety, maybe the wine is made from the Shiraz grape variety or made from the Chardonnay grape variety, etc. So you look at the wine. The color of the wine will tell you a lot about its age as well. Older wines tend to older yellow, sorry, white wines as they get older tend to sort of gain color, and red wines as they get older tend to lose color. All right, so you can tell an age of the wine. When I say age, I'm saying every year grapes are harvested, right? And so for example, in Nasik, the grapes are harvested during February approximately. So it means that in this year, the vintage of the wines produced this year, because the grapes were harvested in February, will be 2017. And that's what you would see on a bottle of wine over here. Let's say XYZ Chateau or Winery, and it's 2017. So the vintage of the vintage of the wine will a 2012 will be older than a 2014, of course. So you can tell the age of the wine by looking at its color. Um, then what you do is you also look for faults. Is the wine okay to drink? You'll see that some wines are bottled in cork. Sometimes because of cork failure, you can have problems that come in the wine, and you can tell by looking at the bottle, looking at the glass, whether there is that problem or not. It gets more complicated, but I don't want to complicate things right now. Okay. Once you've figured out the color, and this is for your reference, just the color, and then you swirl the wine in the glass. You take a take in the aromas. Okay, the more you swirl the wine, the more aromas you'll get. If you're uncomfortable holding it like this and swirling the glass around, don't worry. All you need to do is put it on a table, and you can do it like this as well. It's far easier. So don't stress if you can't hold it up, and do it. It'll come eventually. When you take in the aromas, you try to figure out what aromas you're getting. So you have fruit aromas, you have floral aromas, you have vegetal aromas, and these are all characteristics, all descriptors that we use to describe the aromas that we find in wine. Now, don't get me wrong, there are no flowers or fruits or vegetables that are sort of put into the wine in any level. It's just that we need to create a vocabulary that allows us to express our views on the wine, whether it's aromas or taste, and we use words like different fruits, different floral characteristics, or different vegetable characteristics to describe the wine. Okay, so we're looking at smelling the wine, and we're looking at describing the wine. Okay, based on the aroma. The aroma of the wine will tell you a lot about the wine. In fact, I'm just gonna sidestep here for a second. 85 to 90% of what you actually think you're tasting is actually what you smell. If you had to close your nose and take a sip of this wine, you wouldn't be able to taste too much. You could try this at home. You don't have to do it in wine. You could try it with your chai as well. It works. That's because our our mouth is connected by our nose to a part of our brain called the olfactory center. And these have millions and millions of nerve endings that sort of capture all the aromas that are going through there, and then say, your brain will say, ah, that smells like capsicum, and then you say capsicum. But if your nose is closed, you won't get that, your brain won't register that it might be capsicum in your wine. All right, so you smell it. You've got 4, 5, 1, 2. Don't worry. The more you do it, the more words will come to you naturally, and then you sort of get an impression of what the wine smells like. Then you go and taste the wine. When you're tasting the wine, it's about a few. I'm going to keep it short. One is about what you smelled in terms of the aromas that you smelled. Are those same aromas, have they translated into things that you can taste? So, for example, when I smelled, let's say, banana or strawberry, when I tasted the wine, did that same banana or strawberry come through on the palate? Then we talk about body. Sometimes you'll see in the back label of a bottle it says this wine is medium bodied to full bodied. Don't worry about it. It's quite simple again. It's just simply the weight of the wine on your tongue. So imagine water and imagine milk. Water on your tongue would be lighter, so that would be light bodied. Milk, on the other hand, would be a little fuller or a little bit heavier, so heavier bodied or fuller bodied. It's really simple again. You can taste acidity, which I will not get into right now. And of course, the biggest thing is finish. Okay, so once you taste the wine, you figure out, okay, this has this characteristic, this has this characteristic, whether floral, fruity, whether it has oak. Oak is for red wine, for a lot of red wines and for some white wines, the winemakers will take the wine and put it into oak barrels. When you put the wine in oak barrels, the characteristics of the wood are transcend into the wine. That word is wrong, but I'm sort of going too fast in this anyway. So you take on the oak characteristics of the barrel, and it gives you more complexity. Also, as wine gets older, just for your reference, it'll take on more and more different characteristics that are not purely from the grape variety, but also from age. All these things you will discover when you're looking, smelling, and tasting the wine.
Nikhil, we have a viewer who's asking us a question.
Yeah.
Now that you've described so many features of a wine,
Right.
they want to know if there are any of them that are best for health, and how do these factors play a role in the benefits of wine?
All right, so the characteristics of wine, whether aroma, taste, etc., don't have any health benefits. There is a compound that is found more in red wine than in white wine. It comes from the skin of the grapes. It's called resveratrol, and it's a huge antioxidant. Now, I like my wine. I like to drink wine every day, but I'm never going to propose that you start drinking wine for antioxidant sort of purposes. You can get that from a glass of green tea or a glass of juice as well, made out of grapes and numerous other things. But if you're going to drink, and you want to have something to drink off and on, I think red wine is by far one of the most healthiest things to drink because of that compound called resveratrol.
Okay. You were earlier talking about some bottles are capped with a cork, some are with a metal cap.
Right.
Does that make a difference when it comes to taste of the wine?
Well, I think in India it does. You have to remember that we are in subtropical sort of climate conditions out here. I mean, right now we're at the center out here, and it's nicely, you can wear a jacket and you're quite comfortable. But outside it's about 35 degrees right now. So what happens with heat or with a lot of heat is that it affects the wine. Unfortunately, in India, a lot of our retail stores, a lot of places where you go out to buy your wines don't necessarily have the right infrastructure to keep the wines at the right temperature. I mean, honestly, you should be keeping your wine, or even your places that you buy the wines from, should be keeping the wines in places like this, because the wine, the temperature has been set up so that it preserves the quality of the wine, right?
Is there an average perfect temperature at wine that at that?
I'd say anywhere between 13 to 15 degrees is where you should be keeping your wine. So now, let's be honest, it's not going to happen on natural. Even if your air conditioner is on, it won't be, the maximum will go down to 22 degrees or something like that. So what I would recommend that you do, and if you either you buy your wines every one bottle at a time and you drink it, and then buy the next bottle, choose the person that you're buying or choose the retail shop that you're buying from properly, because it does affect the wine drastically actually. But if you are enthusiast and you want to keep wine at home, I would highly recommend, and there's no other substitute for it, to buy a wine cabinet and keep it in your house. And you can get different sizes too. So I understand, for example, we're doing this in Bombay. You don't want to have to share large amounts of space with your wine cabinet for some of us. But you can get wine cabinets that are 12 bottles, 24 bottles, 6 bottles even, and all the way up to 100, 150 bottles, etc. too.
Coming to the pairing of wine with the kind of food that you're serving with it,
Right.
we have a few questions where our viewers want to know what are the best wines that can go with anything spicy,
Yeah, sure.
and something as classic as a classic roast chicken.
Right. So before I get into that, I'll just finish the
Sure.
screw cap and the cork. So what happens with cork is that it's sort of when heat, if the wine is kept in a place where the temperature is not under perfect, the temperature is not perfect, heat builds up inside the bottle, and when heat builds up inside the bottle, it pushes the cork out. Once the cork goes out, oxygen or air goes in, and oxygen in tiny quantities is wine's best friend, but it was also its worst enemy in large quantities. So what it does is actually oxidizes the wine, and so therefore you buy a wine that's sort of oxidized. It doesn't happen with screw cap because it doesn't allow the cork to be pushed out. Also with screw cap, this is not a screw cap bottle, you can also keep the bottle in this sort of bottle with cork. You have to keep the bottle like this. And again, if the place that you're buying the wine from doesn't do this correctly, you lose out because the cork will dry up and crumble, and then again air will go in. With screw cap, it doesn't matter because you can keep the bottle like this or like this, it's fine. So from an Indian context, and from the point of view that I really want you to enjoy your glass of wine every time you buy a bottle, I know how hard you work for money. I would really like it if I would think that screw cap is the way to go in India, for sure. Now coming to your food and wine pairing thing, guys, if you're not doing it, please start. All right, because wine is just sort of magical in its own way with so many diverse flavors. You have hundreds of great varieties and different locations producing it. So you could have a different sort of bottle of wine from a different region or different style every day of your life, and there's still be more to discover. And the beauty of that is that you have food from various parts of the world that are some great cuisines. And if you match great cuisine with great wine together, you're sort of in for a real joyride. And it's something that I really like to do. But again, don't overcomplicate it. It's not rocket science. It's really simple, actually. Somebody said roast chicken.
Yeah.
For sure, please have a roast chicken. Different styles of wine go better with certain kinds of food. So very basic sort of things. Remember we spoke about body of the wine. If you're going to be eating something that's big and heavy, then you need to have you need to have a wine that is fuller bodied to go along to match the sort of weight of the wine of the wine or the wine or food itself. But if you're having something that is sort of lighter, like a salad, for example, then a lighter style wine will do. Also flavors, like for example, let's say you're having something with peppercorn juice, for example, right? Let's say roast chicken with peppercorn juice. Now, chicken is chicken, but it's also the flavors will be dominated by the peppercorn juice because that's what you added on to it, right? So you need to find a wine that can match the sort of the flavors of that gravy or that juice that you like to go along with it. It's also how you cook the wine. Some dishes are stir fried, some dishes are put in the oven, some are fried, completely fried, and different methods of cooking will give you different textures, and those textures will have to be matched with different sort of styles of wine. Uh, Really hard for me to get into all of them right now,
Yeah.
but what I would suggest you do is the best way to do this is to understand. We all understand our food pretty well, and that's a big advantage, right? Because if you're eating a chicken makhanwala, for example, or a black dal, or sorry, the Punjabi means something, or anything of that sort, you would understand how your food tastes pretty well, right? Now your only problem is that you don't know which wine that goes along with it. Right? So you take the characteristics of your food. So you know, for example, that a black dal would be creamy and big and heavy. So one is that you know that you need a big, powerful wine. Red wines generally are bigger and more powerful than white wines, and so you would go with a red wine that's big and powerful. Okay, certain grape varieties are produce wines that are more fuller body than the others. But very simply, match flavors, match the body of the wine with the body of the food. You can also try contrasting. It's quite interesting, like sugar and spice, for example. So sweet wines or sweeter style wines. So, like for example, in India we have a lot of food that's quite spicy, right? So we also make in India wines that have a certain amount of sweetness in it. Chenin Blanc being one of the sort of most popular grape varieties that we make in India. So if you want to have something that's spicy, you can cut that spice by having a nice refreshing white wine with a nice zippy acidity and a touch of sweetness to cut that spice. The other way to do this sort of if you're cooking at home and you want to have food and wine sort of experiences, you can reduce the amount of spice that you put in the food just to enjoy your wine as well. I, for one, like a certain amount of spice regardless because sort of it gives me sort of the kind of pleasure that I personally like. And the reason I say that is because your experience of wine will be unique to you. So you figure out what you like rather than, so the best way to do it is to experiment. So did I answer that question properly about
Yeah.
all that? Yeah.
There's a user. She has a very specific question. Her name is Gil Sukhpreet, and I'm sorry. He wants to know whether you should pair Chardonnay or Pinot Gris with Indian food. Which one would you prefer?
Both. I mean, when you say Indian food, it's sort of it's too generic a statement. If you're based in North India, the food out there is completely different from the food in South India. And even when I say simply North India and South India, within North India, the cuisines can be quite different as well, right? So just remember this that I'll put this in writing that for every single cuisine that we have in India, whether it's on a larger scale or a smaller scale, or whether it's on a village level, there are wines produced in India and around the world that will go along with it. So definitely Pinot Gris, Chardonnay, and more. Actually, like I said, every single wine will have something or the other that you have with food in India.
Somebody was requesting if you could elaborate on what body of the wine means.
Yeah, sure.
And how do you match it with?
Okay, so I'll use that example again. When you talk about body of wine, we're talking about the weight of the wine on your tongue. How does it make you feel? I'll give you an example. A gravy dish will be heavier than a lighter style, let's say salad, for example. Okay, sorry, bad example, but we're gonna go with it. So the weight of the wine on your tongue will sort of give you an emphasis on what the body of the wine is. Now, water is lighter than milk, right? So imagine if you're having a wine that had the weight of water, and you're having another wine that had the weight of, let's say, milk, you would classify the wine that is like water as a lighter style wine or a light bodied wine, and the one that gives you the weight of milk, sort of like milk, we say that's a fuller bodied wine, right? So it gives you the sort of overall impact that you have when you take a sip. It's sort of depending on the body of the wine. A lighter style wine will be a little bit more lighter and will get over faster. A more fuller bodied wine will give you more of a sort of robust experience, and then it may or may not last, most likely it will last longer. When it comes to food, in terms of pairing, I hope I got that sorted out for you. But in terms of pairing, what will happen if you have, let's say, a very light style wine, a light bodied wine, okay? Let's, for example, say you're having a Sauvignon Blanc, which is a white wine, very light in body, but good amount of acidity. And you have it with something that is very full body, a food that is very heavy to eat, okay? Sometimes, maybe it's not a perfect example, but sometimes the food will be so heavy that it will make the wine seem insipid. It means the wine won't match up in terms of body to the food. And so it's important to match the weight of the wine with the weight of the food. I mean, of course, we're not talking about grammage here and exact sciences. You're saying, okay, this is a heavy dish, so let's have a wine that is full bodied or heavy bodied as well, or vice versa, or middle ground somewhere.
Okay. Well, somebody wants to know what is the best time that we can keep our keep wine in a regular refrigerator. After which you mean you have to consume it, or it's
I think that you can, if you have space in your refrigerator, it's about the refrigerator becomes a point of humidity and vibrations, etc. But listen, most of us, we're not talking about keeping 50 bottles of wine in your fridge. If I did that, my wife would throw me out of the house. But you're talking about a couple of bottles of wine that will be kept for some amount of time. When I say some amount of time, it could be days, it could be a month. And if you don't have any other option to keep it at home, then the fridge is your best bet. Um, um, the ideal way of storing wine would be to have it in a place that doesn't have too much vibration. Fridges generally are opened and closed 10 times a day. Like for example, I open a fridge every 2 minutes, magically hoping that something else will appear that I could eat. And I'm sure you're like that too. So you have to keep your wine in a place that has very little vibration or zero vibration, in fact. And it should also be at a constant temperature. When fridge is open and closed, you also sort of playing with that temperature variation. So keep if you're going to be drinking wine on a daily basis and the wine bottle keeps changing every couple of days, fridge no problem. But if you have a really special bottle of wine and it's valuable, it's expensive, and you want to keep it, I would and you have more than one and you have multiple bottles of wine that you are going to want to start collection with, buy a wine fridge, buy a wine cabinet.
Are there any special storage parameters for already opened bottle of wine or a half empty bottle of wine?
Yeah, I think that you guys should really know this because I think a lot of you spend open a bottle of wine and not all of you finish a bottle of wine and then after a couple of days you sort of you don't want to drink vinegar so you throw it out. But there are ways to preserve the wine. You get something like a vacuum back. These are sort of pumps, like they look like bicycle pumps. Then rather than putting air into a bottle, you sort of take out the air from the bottle and you create this vacuum. You can buy it at a Godrej Nature's Basket or select places. I can't remember exactly where right now, but Nature's Basket is the kind of place that you would have it. And what it does is that it takes out all the air from the bottle. So basically, your wine is kept in a vacuum, and it doesn't allow the wine to get spoiled. So let's say you have that, then you can keep the wine under that condition for about 10 odd days maximum. But if you don't have that, and you just open a bottle of wine, have a couple of glasses, and then put the cork back on it, and put it back into your fridge, and I'd say max 2 days. The third day onwards, you're going to start seeing a little bit of oxidation. You'll start seeing it the second day as well. Second day is sort of doable, but from the third day it'll be very apparent. And I mean, to me, when I open a bottle, I actually drink it, or I make sure that I have my saver so that I can keep it for another day.
Can you fundamentally maybe establish the difference between an Indian wine, the taste of it, and how does it differ from an international brand or a wine?
Okay, so that's a really tricky question to ask because you're asking to make comparisons between Indian wine and a range of wines from all over the world that are themselves different from each other to a certain extent.
Right.
I think that what you should know for Indian wine is that we've been producing wine for about 20, 25 odd years now, and we're in a hotter climate. So I would say that it's difficult to say that it's Indian wine is Indian, and therefore there is a certain sense of place when it comes to it. I think you get more smokiness in some wines. You get more body because our temperatures are warmer. More sunlight means more sugar. More sugar means with the fermentation process means higher alcohol strength. But it doesn't sort of always apply. Like you can have blind tasting. You could do, and I do this quite often actually. We at All Things Nice do this quite often. We do blind tastings between Indian and international wines, and the Indian wines come out on top over the international wines. And in some cases, people can't tell the difference at all. So I don't think there's any one clear answer to that. However, if I'm forced to make an answer, then I do say that in some wines you do get this element of smoke, which is because, in my opinion, could be because of the iron content in our soil.
Okay. Since we have spoken so much about the different taste, textures, bodies of wine, is there a definitive feature that separates a wine that has gone bad already from the rest of the wine, or is there a parameter?
I mean, at the end of it, we've been talking about all these things. It's about pleasure, right? So if you take a sip of wine that doesn't give you pleasure, then it's not good. When you allow a wine to be open for a couple of days and oxygen sort of interacts with the wine and oxidizes it, it takes on sort of stale, oxidized vinegar sort of flavor profile. And if you're one of those that drinks a glass or two of vinegar and you like it, then sure, oxidized wine is your thing. But for most of us, it's not. So you won't like it. Simple as that.
Just now you said that during your blind tasting sessions between an Indian wine and an international wine, sometimes the Indian wines have come up higher, better. Does the Indian sparkling wine measure up to what is commonly called as champagne?
I don't think we're at champagne level yet, but I do think we make fantastic sparkling wine in India. Some of the brands that I personally enjoy are Chandon. Chandon's both their rosé and their regular brut. York produces a fantastic sparkling wine. You have others as well, right? Uh, you have to realize from a global perspective, Champagne is just one very small, tiny part of France that produces great sparkling wine, which is called Champagne because it comes from that region. However, you have Prosecco coming out of Italy, you have Cava coming out of Spain, you have sparkling wine coming out of Australia, the US, Chile, etc., etc. So on a global level and not a champagne level, I think we make fantastic sparkling wines. Some of them will be better than the other ones that you get internationally as well, and some of them will not. That's the answer to that.
Okay. Since we have a glass of wine here,
Yeah.
could you tell us what exactly it is and describe it for us?
Okay.
Yeah.
What I'm drinking right now, I should have got a bottle of Indian wine, frankly. But what I've got right now is a bottle of it's a wine called Il Bucciato. It's from a producer called Guado Altaso. It's from a region called Bulgaria, which is very close to Tuscany, in Italy, and it's a really nice wine. It's an expensive wine as well. I'm not saying that this is, I wasn't planning to do an actual tasting in front of you guys right now. This is just purely for display. Otherwise, we're doing a taster. I'm going to bottle of Indian wine for sure. So again, I mean, we're drinking a wine. The vintage of this wine is 2014 because it says so on the label. It's a blend of Shiraz, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Merlot, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just a nice, big, powerful wine. Great to go along with steaks or lamb or anything like that. It's been aged in oak for a considerable amount of time, so you've got this beautiful oak sort of characteristic. And it's very complex. It's a lovely wine to have. Take your time with. I should talk to you about it. I just realized I'm looking at the glass and I haven't spoken about the glass itself. Like for example, there are two glasses out here. All right. Now this is from a glass producer called Riedel, which I totally adore. I think they make they hands down make the world's best glasses. Um, the the quality of your wine experience will depend uh, very largely on the kind of glassware that you use. Um, even within, let's say, red wines, it's not like you can go further into having different shapes of glassware for different grape varieties to enhance the characteristics of that particular grape variety. But before you get to that level, if you had to have this red wine in this white wine glass, what you taste and smell will be quite different. And similarly, if you have to have a white wine in this glass, your experience is going to be a little different. Um, I, I, I would invest in a couple of glasses, at least if you're someone who likes wine, likes to drink wine at home, because it makes or breaks sort of your experience. And the reason for this is simple. Red wine, you'll see, has a bigger belly, and the bigger belly is because you want more wine to be on the surface area to be exposed to air, so that it opens up faster. With white wine, while things are changing now, you have wine that is sort of more all those aromas and flavors to a certain part of your mouth and nose. Because white wine is more delicate, you want to you want to catch every bit of it, and that's why there's a difference. So you can try it at home too. If you have your regular glass of wine, just to give you an example of how important the glass is, take your wine and put it into two different glasses. Put it into a glass where you drink your water from, and then a proper wine glass. And it's fine, right? It should taste the same in both glasses, but it won't. And then similarly, even within wine glasses, there are a range of glasses that you should choose from. One thing for sure, get the right shape, and also get glasses that are not too thick. I think that when you have glasses that are too thick, as you can knock it really hard, it would crack just like that. When you put the glass to your mouth, you don't want to be tasting glass. And therefore, glassware makes it's an important part of your wine experience.
Just one last question. One of our viewers wants to know how long you need to decant a red wine before drinking it.
Okay, so not all red wines need to be decanted. Sometimes if you decant a wine that is sort of not too opulent or powerful, etc., then those sort of flavor and aromas will sort of dissipate faster because you've allowed it to disappear into the atmosphere faster. So wines wines that are bigger, more robust, or certain wines that have been produced in a certain way, or certain grape varieties will do well from putting into a decanter. Now, certain wines can be decanted for 20 minutes, and certain wines should be decanted for longer. But for on an average level, if you're opening a bottle of, say, powerful reserve sort of Cabernet Sauvignon or Barolo or top of Bordeaux, then or Napa Valley Cabernet, for example, then I would say 30 minutes is good enough. And then also, what you should know is that the wine is, once you pour it into your glass, it's also breathing in your glass. If you want to accelerate the breathing, the opening up, you can always rotate the wine in your glass itself. But generally, don't uh, don't decant all red wines or don't decant all wines. You can decant white wines, you can decant red wines too, but don't decant all. And depending on who it is, if it's one of those everyday sort of wines, then decanting it might not make sense. But if it's a special wine, a more premium wine, then decanting does certainly make sense. And half an hour to more, depending on what kind of wine it is the answer.
Does age make a difference as to whether you have to decant a wine or not?
Yeah, but also what happens, age also makes a difference, but also I wouldn't necessarily decant a wine that is very old for too long because it's already sort of lost a lot of its vigor and its flavors and its aromas. It's taken on different flavors and aromas, but it's also lost, it's become more delicate as like how we would become as we get older. So I wouldn't decant those for too long.
Okay. There's another interesting question, and I have to ask this. People use wine to cook as well,
Yeah.
which means it's exposed to heat.
Right.
How does that make a difference, and what sort of flavors do they usually add to food?
Okay, so when you're cooking with wine, and it's an integral part of wine, I mean, you should be cooking with wine actually, is that you use wine to add flavors, right? So let's say, for example, if I know, if I'm cooking something that is, that has green, grassy sort of flavors, then I'll probably add some white wine that has those similar flavors. What happens in the heat is that the alcohol evaporates, and what you have left in the pan or whatever you're putting in is sort of concentrated versions of those flavors that add to your flavor profile of the dish that you're cooking. Um, I see a lot of people using wines that are really inexpensive, wine that they wouldn't drink themselves, and I don't think that's the way to go. I would, I would use wine. I would never use very premium wine or very expensive wine because that's sort of blasphemy as well, unless you can afford it. But I would definitely use wine that you would like to drink into cooking.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nikhil.
All right, thank you.
We look forward to seeing you for during the tasting session.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, then.
Next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. For those of you who are still tuned in, to read more interesting stories, do visit ht48hours.in. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ashley.